Hello, welcome to the first innovation conversation powered by the Emera IdeaHUB. This is a series of conversations with founders, researchers, and innovators. This first conversation was with Margaret Palmeter, the director of the Emera IdeaHUB. In this conversation, I asked Margaret all about her work with the IdeaHUB and how her and her team have been helping startup companies grow. I'm your host, Mitch Gregory. Let's get into it. Margaret, welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Mitch. Nice to see you.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. I'm pretty excited to start the series and talk to people like you who have lots to contribute to the community and innovation as a whole. So, Margaret, let's get started. What motivates you to do what you do?
That's a big question. For me personally, I'm motivated probably in two key areas. So, one is I feel like one of the drivers behind why I get into this space and why we do what we do at the Hub is economic development. So, it's all about driving impact for our region, driving the economy forward, and creating opportunities. But what motivates me on a personal level beyond just that is having impact. So, adding value where I can with teams and companies and young innovators like yourself, I find really rewarding. And that's one of the big drivers for why I love my job and being in this space.
Well, I guess let's talk about. So that's what motivates you. Now, what do you do? What does Margaret do? What does the manager of the Idea Hub? What do you do? And where do you fit into the greater innovation ecosystem as a whole?
That's a big question. What do? I get to do all sorts of stuff. No 2 days are the same, really, at the Idea Hub. It all looks and feels very different. So maybe it would be helpful to start about kind of where I fit at Dell and lead that into what I do at the Idea Hub. So I've been at Dell for about 7 years now, and I came to the university within a kind of economic development hat on and a hat of helping companies, local companies, Nova Scotia companies, commercialize internationally. And so I started my career at Dow. I had a career before that, but started my career at Dow in technology commercialization and in industrial partnerships. And so did that for quite some time at the university and was able to see the impact and value of where startups fit in that ecosystem and where technology fits and new technologies and new innovations. And around the same time, serendipitously, there was a lot of new initiatives happening supported by the federal government and the provincial government. And Dalhousie was really taking a leadership role in spearheading a lot of those initiatives forward. So things like the Sandbox, things like Creative Destruction Lab Atlantic. We had provincial leaders from Dalhousie University participate in a program down at MIT called the REAP, the Regional Entrepreneurship Accelerator Program, looking at what can Nova Scotia and what can Atlantic Canada do to accelerate growth? And that was the genesis, that was the birth of the idea for what would become the Idea Hub, the Emera IdeaHUB. So it was some key business leaders and key leaders at Dalhousie that were really visionary in creating the concept for what would become the Idea Hub. And obviously we're a brand new building on Sexton campus in the Faculty of Engineering, and we're focused on accelerating the growth and development of really early staged physical product-based innovations. And the work that I was doing at the time just dovetailed perfectly with what was happening at the Idea Hub. I was managing a patent portfolio for the university. I was helping companies before there was an actual hub for them to be in. So companies like Graphite Innovation and Technologies, I really was with them since day one. So it was a really logical fit to come down and launch the Idea Hub. So we are 2 years old now as a facility and as a program. And what do I do is figure it out, to be honest with you. It's figure out what do we need to be doing that has impact. So it started with working with the team to figure out what equipment do we need to have in our facility to actually help these teams. How does the facility need to operate to help these teams? What is the profile of the teams that need our help? And now as we kind of embark on year 3, the questions and the things that I get to work on are how do we grow our impact? How do we scale that? What else do we need to be doing? How do we work and engage with all of our various partners, from big corporates to other, innovation support organizations, both inside and outside Dalhousie and across Canada. So there's all sorts of program elements. There's all sorts of strategy. There's all sorts of mentoring and advice and guidance for our teams. We're up to over 50 companies right now supported. So as you know, Mitch, I spend a fair amount of time on the phone and on the Microsoft Teams and all the various formats to engage and try to help plug our teams into what they need.
Okay, what problems do you see with trying to achieve what you're trying to do by helping teams and working with all these different stakeholders? What do you struggle with, and what what are you working on to make better?
Well, and I think that one of the things that's really important, and it could be viewed as a challenge, but I think is really important, is ensuring fit. And it's ensuring that we don't duplicate. And so there's a lot of other great resources and programs out there. And my goal is to plug into them. So to find them, to know what they are, and to help our teams plug into them. So that when we do create a new resource or we create a new program or we develop a way to support our companies, that we're not wasting effort and competing. Atlantic Canada, especially, is so small, and I firmly believe that we have to collaborate to compete. So
Yeah.
it's probably one of our biggest challenges, but it's also our biggest opportunity, is to find those gaps and then fill those gaps. And we've been really fortunate. We've got a really expert advisory council. We've got great relationships with other incubators and support organizations. And we've been taking a very strategic approach to doing that. So it's definitely challenging, but it's a lot of fun and it's very rewarding to fill those gaps.
Who are you trying to support? Who does the Idea Hub? Who are the stakeholders, and who do you work with? I mean, obviously, you support people like me, student entrepreneurs, but you also work with companies that are a little further along. Yeah, who do you support?
Well, we support you. And we're absolutely loving supporting you, Mitch, and profiles of really, student leaders like yourself who are keen and ambitious and want to expand their skill set and learn more and potentially pursue their own ventures. That's definitely something we support. And on the student side, what we've done is really expand the who, that profile. So we have, program streams. That's how we define things for how we support different groups. And our Young Innovators program, which you're part of, is a great profile of some of our stakeholders and who we support. And they're coming from universities, institutions, recent alumni. We even have a high school student who's our youngest young innovator participating in that program. And it's a way to get access to new ways of thinking, workshops, specialized supports, resources to do that. And as you know, you're our first entrepreneurial co-op. So actually supporting a student working on their own venture, and really bridging that gap as you first start incorporating and are really going through those early stages in your kind of customer discovery and product design process. Then I would say, the next stakeholder group that we support is startup companies. And they're startup companies that are in the prototyping phase. So they need to build and hopefully rapidly iterate. And the goal between all of that programming is helping teams actually physically get their product put together in a way that they can get in the hands of their customer or their end user sooner, to validate and make sure that it's actually going to be something that people will purchase and buy, and can be produced the way they think it can be produced. And typically what happens with the companies that we support, we say they're deep tech or tough tech. And so deep tech means they're rooted in intellectual property. They're rooted in a really novel design improvement. Tough tech means they're tough to build. This isn't the type of thing that you can just kind of put together yourself on a weekend. Well, maybe you could, but most people can't.
Oh,
And yeah, and the trick with physical products and with prototyping is to get investment or to get revenue, you actually have to build it. You have to prove that it does what you say it can do. And so a lot of our teams, when they come in, they're pretty cash strapped. They're bootstrapped. They're using non-dilutive funding, and we help them fill that gap and get their prototyping done so that they can unlock investment, so that they can actually start selling product and stand on their own 2 feet, or go into a later stage incubator accelerator that really helps them with that next step. And at the end of year 2 of operation, I'd say we're doing that pretty well. And I'm looking forward to doing a lot more of that for those companies.
so the dream is to build physical products and to build technology startups that can actually build stuff, right? And to leverage the funding resources and the manufacturing know-how here in Nova Scotia. You talked about deep tech. You talked about hard tech. What are the big industries that you see a lot of companies working in, and a lot of funding resources available for, and problems that need to be solved? And what are the industries that you see there being a lot of success in?
Good question again. So the interesting about kind of the innovation space in the province of Nova Scotia specifically, but really in Atlantic Canada, is there's some really core areas of strength and really strong industry segments and sectors. And what I've seen in my time being in the ecosystem is that those sectors they're at the forefront globally. tends to seem to align with the core competencies that our research and our academic institutions have a lot of capabilities in, which makes sense. We're training a lot of people and pushing them to really push the boundaries of what's possible in the research labs, which drives innovation. And then we're seeing not just spinouts, but established companies in some key sectors that are really doing some incredible things in our province. And it's being mirrored in the teams and companies that we're supporting at the IdeaHUB. So we are sector agnostic, as you know. We define it by tough tech and deep tech, and really look for those teams that we can support regardless of who the end user is and regardless of what industry segment they fall in. But that being said, there's definitely some trends into some key industries where we see kind of critical mass, where we're seeing a number of companies and teams working in a similar segment. So those spaces are med tech, so medical technologies, and for us specifically, medical devices. There are some really incredible companies that we're supporting, and some that have graduated us and are going on to InnovaCorp, who also supports a lot of really great medical device and med tech companies. We're seeing clean technologies. Really excited today that the news story went up celebrating Rayleigh Solar Tech, who's one of our recent alumni. Yeah, they're very cool. And coming out of a research lab at Dalhousie, combination of engineering and physics expertise behind what they're doing. And so a lot of different kind of clean technology companies. Obviously, Dalhousie also has really great industry research partnerships with the multinationals. Tesla would be the first one that comes to mind, but a number of others, driving battery storage and clean technologies. The third area is the ocean supercluster. So Atlantic Canada's home to Canada's Ocean Supercluster, which is a national program driving innovation, a massive program supported by the federal government and big industry that brings startups to the table. And so we've got companies like GIT, which bridges the gap between clean tech and ocean tech, getting support through multiple Ocean Supercluster projects to deploy their technologies. And then this is the great thing about, I'm going to come back to the sectors in a second, but this is a great thing about the companies coming through is because they're so plugged into the ecosystem, and because we filled a gap and we've got our tentacles, working with and not duplicating those other programs. You've got a company like GIT, who has come through the IdeaHUB, come through the Faculty of Engineering. They're in the ocean tech space. They've got support through Cove, which is an amazing incubator over on the Dartmouth waterfront in HRM, and now getting support through the Ocean Supercluster. And now they're doing massive R&D collaborations back with Dalhousie. Yeah, like huge, like tons of students and grad students. Full circle, exactly. So that's the third industry segment. Back to your question, is ocean tech. The fourth one would be ag tech, so agriculture-based technologies. So there's some, and Dalhousie obviously has the agricultural campus in Truro, and so there's some great opportunities to not only develop technologies, but deploy, validate, and test them, and then sell them globally. So I would say those tend to be the core segments where we're seeing a lot of innovation. The fifth would be IoT, which again, these segments are not mutually exclusive. A lot of companies fit in a couple of different ones, but IoT devices and security systems around IoT devices and tech-enabled devices that integrate existing technologies with some new platforms is definitely another area where I've seen significant jumps in the last couple of years as well.
Where do you see the synergies between entrepreneurship and engineering? That's where my mindset has changed in the last year. It's been really taking an entrepreneurial focus and lens, and observing my engineering process. I think I've learned a lot, and I am definitely thinking differently now about how I run through my project. So where do you see that synergy?
I think it starts with critical thinking, and I think that it's not just problem solving, it's problem solving why. Why are you solving this problem? What is solving this problem going to do? How is that going to impact or change things? So for me, it starts with really developing, and there's all sorts of skills that fall under that. But for me, it's under the umbrella of critical thinking, which I just think is so important for our engineers and for our problem solvers of the future. And then I think where it comes down for engineers is, and for our students and for our alumni, there's incredible skill sets where an engineer can improve almost anything. They can make something better. They can see ways to add more buttons, add more features, increase functionality, all those types of things with product. And as you know, engineers want to jump right into the fixing and the
Mhm.
doing and the making, which is incredible. And there's incredible skills to be done in getting hands-on and doing that. But for me, the bigger question is why? Why that button? Why that feature? Why that functionality? And so to design with a purpose, and to design with a purpose around utility and around user experience of at the end of the day, especially with products, somebody is going to be using it's going to
Yep.
be impacting or being integrated with somebody at some way, shape, or form, even from a distance. And so that why and that how and to make it useful for them is huge. The other thing in particular about the physical product space, and that I think is not necessarily unique to us at the Idea Hub, but something that we really stress, which is build it and build it fast. And the concept of a minimum viable product, it doesn't need to be perfect.
Yeah.
Don't
It doesn't
make
need to
your
have all the
first one.
features, right?
Exactly. Don't make your first one your end one. And starting with cardboard or, dollar store supplies and just kind of tweaking it has a ton of value. So, and oftentimes, in my opinion, and I think Cliff would echo this as our academic director, more value than jumping into the CAD modeling and the rendering and all, you know, just start somewhere, get your hands dirty and do it fast and quick and create minimum functionality. Get it to do what it needs, just what it needs to do. Not everything it could do, but what it
Yeah.
needs to do to add value. And the interesting component of that is that's the earliest stage. But the other thing is the mindset about the end goal. So if the end goal is mass production, you need to be thinking about that when you're first building that cardboard prototype. And so some of those design principles, which are really hard engineering skills, we've integrated and overlaid with design thinking and with engineering and entrepreneurship. And I think that's the benefit of a lot of our programming as well, is that we force you to think about what you need to be doing now and doing fast, but still keeping the end goal in mind and how to get there.
Yeah. I think the biggest, most important lesson that you taught me in the last 4 months was that you have to focus on the problem. And from an engineering, like an engineers are there to solve problems, right? That's what they do. And if you're trying to build something, you need to look at the problem requirements and the definition and all that stuff first, right? So the entrepreneurial mindset needs to make sure that you have the problem and that the problem's worth solving from a business point of view, right? So yeah, I totally agree on the importance of why, right? Why you're building something. Um, yeah, and a lot of that, I've spoken to many different fellow engineering students who are on an entrepreneurial journey and have gone through many of the programs. And the feedback that I got from them is that they they get told to talk to people, and you're like, what? Can I just code something? Can I just make it? And talking to people is a really important skill, and why you're doing it is because you need to figure out what the problem is, right? You need to learn about the problem, learn about the stakeholders and everything. So I've found that is that process of communicating and figuring out what the problem is and quantifying it and everything is a real skill that can be applied early stages of an engineering problem or engineering process, right? Um, so yeah, there's definitely some synergies between entrepreneurship and engineering, and it makes sense why the Idea Hub's there on the third floor, right? Because it connects, making more sense every day. So you engage with stakeholders, you support students, you support founders, you support industry members. What tools do you use, and how do you build your solution? What do you build, and what tools are you using to help them and engage them? One, I want to start off by saying your biggest thing, I think, is that you can connect people to the resources, like you have the Idea Hub, and through you know where the resources are. And I just want to start off by saying that one first, because there's more tools that are there that I want to hear about too. But yeah, what are the tools?
For me, the big you're hitting on the big one. For me, the biggest thing is that we are connected. It's relationships. My biggest tool is relationships, and
Totally.
it's the relationships of the team, right? So there's the network that we're able to leverage through our advisory council and their incredible connections to industry. There's the relationships through our engineering team and their connections not only deep into Dalhousie, not just faculty of engineering, but across disciplines at Dalhousie, and outside of Dalhousie to other institutions in Atlantic Canada and beyond. And that same engineering expertise from both of those perspectives unlocks, manufacturing expertise, our networks and connections in the innovation space, and with other university linked incubators across Canada. There's this great network called iInc, of the Innovate to Incubate Network of Canada, of the university linked incubators, and we're plugged in internationally. And so we can get expertise from Silicon Valley, from Boston, from overseas. And what we also have in our backyard is pretty phenomenal.
Yeah.
And so it's all about relationships and connections. And I would say that one of the interesting things that I've noticed about a tool in our toolbox is we treat each team, and we've done this since day one, we treat each team as their own team, and identify with them as a partnership with that team, and in relationship with that team, what their needs are. And sometimes it's challenging them on what they think their needs are and what we think they are, but what their needs are, and then plugging them into what they actually need. And sometimes it's creating a new program to do that. And more often than not, it's also plugging them into all those other resources that are out there. And no two of you are traveling the same path. There's a lot of similarities. And I can tell you there's themes and programs and resources and connections that seem to span most of you. But at the end of the day, it's about giving each team what they need when they need it. So finding for you what you need when you need it. And I think that is probably one of the biggest tools in our pocket. Not to underplay the value of the incredible facility that we have, and the amazing tools that we have on site, the mechanical assembly room, the electronics building and testing room, the whole suite of 3D printers and advanced manufacturing technologies that we have. On the first floor, obviously, where the student teams are as well, the Faculty of Engineering operates a full machine shop. And I have to give a mad shout out to Graham Muirhead, who's the technical lead at the IdeaHUB. And I mean, he's phenomenal anyways. He's one of the best problem solvers and engineering technical problem solvers, but also just a general problem solver I've ever met. And during COVID, I mean, since July, he was in the facility alone for months, helping the teams prototype from a distance. People were doing drive-by drop-offs because it, wasn't safe to get into the facility, and Dalhousie had protocols in place that didn't allow that. And so Graham was the magic that made it happen. So when you talk about tools that we have and resources that we have, Graham and what he's able to do in the facility, those are some serious tools.
Graham's skill set and the way he can hop on a different machine and hop on another machine and build an assembly of all these different components built from different materials, different manufacturing methods, is really inspiring to me. Like, it is the reason why you can't see, but there's a 3D printer right there. It's like one of those reasons that I'll buy a tool and learn about how to do it, because I've seen the incredible skill that somebody who can jump in and build something has. And he's a legend. He's definitely a legend. I've built a car with him. I've heard about cars he's built, and definitely has a really key skill set. So he's a huge resource for people trying to build stuff. Go Graham. So you talked about virtual work a little bit there. How has the jump to virtual changed your workflow? And then how do you see us going back? Where do you see the future of the IdeaHUB as we get back into the new normal? Sorry, this is tough.
Yeah. No, it's actually, it's a really interesting one. So I was making that face because I was thinking about it. It's unlocked potential for us, which again, didn't expect. Physical facility, helping people build physical products. Wouldn't think that virtual would play a big role in that. It has played a huge role in that, and a huge role in unlocking and enabling a lot of that. So, I mean, one of the biggest changes for me in workflow is I used to be in my office and people could pop by and knock on my door. I miss that. And yet somehow we've maintained the connections virtually. I feel like our relationship, even just between you and I, it's gotten even stronger, right? Because I'm not torn in all these different directions. I'm not running between meetings all over Dalhousie's campus, or, somebody's not, monopolizing my time in my office, problem solving, which is great, but I'm able to pop between multiple calls. Now, we go back to one of your first questions about challenges. It's also a massive challenge. I'm in back-to-backs all day, every day, because the value is the connections, right? So, and I know Katie, who's our new IdeaHUB coordinator, we're having conversations about how do we scale this and what's the sustainability plan for how we do this, because the more and more teams that we bring on, the more resources that we need to be able to unlock for them. And our alumni keep coming back. So, in a really positive way, they've got such deep connections back to engineering. These industry partnerships, these relationships, hiring our students, funding research and R&D collaborative projects back with Dal, even ongoing advice and guidance. I don't think I
No.
anticipated
Am I
how much
frozen?
our alumni would still need. Oh, am I gone? Are you gone? Are we frozen? This is the challenge of the technical world. Hello, Mitch.
Okay, you're back. That was a great train of thought, though. Hiring, and then you ended. Hiring people, you want to scale stuff.
That's one of the challenges of the technical world, though, is the freezing and the glitches. We all know I've had webcam issues lately.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
but it also it expanded
that's
our reach. So that's the other thing about virtual, expanded our reach. We
yeah.
took the build program, which is really exposure to skill sets and training around actually building products and prototyping faster and iterating and design, all those types of things. We took it virtual, and so now we've got participants from all over the region. We're not limited to just Halifax, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, that's really awesome. I've found that too, is people are open to engaging with you a lot more now virtually, and they're more able to be connected. I had a question for a prof. I sent her an email, and then I got a call 2 minutes later, and she's like, gives me a whole 10 15 minutes of her time, which is like, I appreciate it, but it answered like 50 of my questions instead of having to email it, right?
Okay,
So
you've got to give this prof a shout out. Who is it?
Macito.
I was
She's
gonna say it's May. I knew it would be
yeah,
May
she's
Cito. She's
great.
a rock star. She is a rock star.
She's
Yeah.
a great example of a professor who does a lot of industry work and has contributed a lot of innovations to the ocean sector. So yeah, there's a lot of role model professors out there that kind of engage with their students in a really beneficial way. So yeah, really
And May
appreciate that.
thinks this way. May comes from industry and from DRDC. She is now the Irving Shipbuilding Chair in Marine Autonomous Systems. Like, May thinks about engineering
And the practical stuff.
as innovation and entrepreneurship. She might not use those words, but that's the way that I think she approaches engineering.
No, for sure. Yeah. Um, yeah, virtual has definitely changed a lot of things. But moving forward, I think there are going to be components of the virtual workflow that will stay, and a lot of it will disappear, right? We're obviously going to be having more meetings in person eventually, and we're going to be building stuff again. We'll be back in the facility. But I think perhaps some of the outreach and maybe the connectivity of a virtual workflow will stay, and I kind of hope that some of that will, and stuff like this, like I would have never have seen a virtual conversation, something like this, which I've taken a lot of value from, and I'm interested to see where stuff like this goes moving forward. So it's definitely changed a lot, and it's going to change a lot moving forward. Now, we talked about the future, but I want to end on going back to the past. Um, in my past, I've had a lot of really strong mentors that have really supported me. It's professors like Lucas Swan, and it's people like my dad and people that have taught me my technical skills that I use all the time. Now, do you have any memorable mentors or anybody who's helped you along your journey that you would think about? Yeah.
Tons. Yeah, I've been really fortunate. And I kind of wonder if that's another one of the values of Atlantic Canada is the culture. And the culture is to be really helpful and to want to make those connections. So falling into this, and I feel like I fell into this career path in a lot of ways. I didn't set out thinking I would be launching and running an incubator for engineering tech companies. That wasn't something in high school that when I was looking at my career path was on the radar for me. And so yeah, no, I've been extremely fortunate, and I would say it started with my parents, who are both engineers themselves.
Oh, cool.
My grandfather was an engineer, aunts and uncles,
Wow.
cousins. I've grown up with engineers. Not an engineer myself. I've got an arts background, which all the engineers are like, "Ooh, arts background." But and I would say maybe engineers aren't that way. They were back in the day. It was like, "Oh, you're gonna go into arts. What are you gonna do? What's your game plan with that?" With engineering, it was a pretty clear path back when I was in high school, and people were looking at career opportunities. And so my parents were definitely mentors in encouraging me to think differently, to ask questions, the value of relationships, and a lot of, I would say, kind of my morals and work ethic come from my parents, and setting really strong examples for me. My dad's an entrepreneur as well. And my mom has always volunteered in the community and led a lot of initiatives. So I learned a lot from them, and they continue to be mentors and very trusted advisors about everything going on from A to
Yep.
Z. And then throughout my career, there's been a number of people that have stepped up in very different ways. I had a history prof in my undergrad at St. FX who, really pushed me and encouraged me to step out of my shell in a lot of ways. And that's something that I'll take with me for the rest of my life. I had a colleague who he was retired after a senior career in the military in the US, who was a really, really close friend and colleague during my master's studies in international diplomacy. And his way of thinking really kind of challenged me to think differently. A great mentor starting out my career from an economic development perspective locally. And then at Dalhousie, throughout my career at Dal, I've had some really incredible colleagues. And so I'll give a special shout out to an incredible woman business leader, Doris Grant, who's now a Senior Director of Innovation with Nova Scotia Health. She and I worked together. She was a director in a previous role for me at Dalhousie. And she's somebody that I consider a mentor to this day. And then there's others that they would probably be shocked that I consider them mentors. They probably wouldn't know it. And they're kind of mentors from a distance. So,
Yep.
and that's people like Chris Huskelson. And so he's on the advisory council for the IdeaHUB, and I get to engage with Chris, in that capacity. But I also see his leadership as a business leader in the community. And I would say with that kind of economic development lens and a lens for impact, it resonates with me. Even people like Ray Ivany and the One Nova Scotia report, which was coming out right at the time when I was embarking on my master's, those were things that ingrained themselves in me and have become part of who I am and what I want to do, and the impact and the mark that I want to leave and that I hope we're having at the IdeaHUB and continue to have and grow at the IdeaHUB.
Awesome. Yeah, there's people that you engage with on a day to day, and you just learn so much from, right? And you may not, they might not see you as a mentoree, but to you, they really are there. You've learned so much from. Um, yeah, that's awesome. So I kind of want to end on one question here. Um, I want to see, what would you say to yourself? What would you say to your 10-year ago self?
Have confidence in your abilities. I think that's one thing that I have realized is that I bring a skill set to the table that's valuable. And I work with engineers, and I work with PhD engineers and PhD scientists and PhD researchers and amazing business leaders. And I get to sit across the table from them and add value. These are people that are experts in their field, that are leading the charge globally, that are inventors coming up with incredible new things. And I have a skill set that's valuable to them. And 10 years ago, I don't think I recognized that. And in the world that I'm in now, I do. And part of the reason I recognize that is, and this is a credit to the people that I get to sit around the table with and help. You're also respectful and you're so appreciative. And you'll say, "Oh, I didn't think of it that way," or "Oh, thank you," and it's a really fun community to be part of. And so, I'm glad it exists now. I wish it existed 10 years ago when I was, just getting going, but I'm really glad to be having it in place now. And I can't wait for students like you and others to see what you're going to do, whether it's your startup, whether it's working for an established company, or potentially, leading the IdeaHUB or the incubators of the future. Right. So I think that's going to be fun to see.
Yeah, that's a great message, Margaret. I'm excited to see where we'll be in 10 years, and see where the startup ecosystem, where the IdeaHUB is then. So thank you for your time today. I'll be talking to you soon for sure.
Thanks, Mitch.
Bye. Thanks for joining us today on the first innovation conversation. If you enjoyed this, feel free to leave a comment down below or send us a message. You can reach the IdeaHUB at any of our social medias, or check out the website for more information on how you can get involved. I am Mitch Gregory. I'll catch you on the next innovation conversation.